system on fire. Military science fiction podcast. Books or stories every Wednesday. Military science fiction podcast. Discussion, interviews, reviews, and rants. Military science fiction podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today we are doing another movie review, which we like to do, but you might immediately jump on this one and say that's not MILSF. But I will
That's not
argue
MILSF.
that's not MILSF. But I'll say
Not
that it
MILSF.
has this ties
That's not
into
MILSF.
other things that we have talked about, which is MILSF adjacent, because it's got characters that were in the military and now we're dealing with that later. And the movie is Serenity, which is an extenuation or ending of Firefly, which was, if you don't know, you should know, was a series that came out in 2000s. It was on Fox and 2003. Yep.
Check
It
it
was
out.
on
I got
Fox.
props today.
Yeah. Oh, look at that.
I got the
Yep.
DVD box set and
Sure
the
enough, you got
DVD
props.
of the
The
movie.
kids on the hood, plus
See,
my
if you're a
mom and
true
my
fan, you'd have the
pops.
Blu-ray box set, which is in the other room.
No,
Uh,
this is the full screen DVD.
ooh,
This
yeah.
is the old school, man.
I used to have that.
The full screen DVD. Wow.
I mean, I
Or you
buy,
can watch it for free on YouTube.
These
yeah,
are also DVDs, not Blu-ray.
I buy all the Firefly stuff because I want them to keep making it. So there's
Right.
the books, the comic books, the
No, you don't. You really don't. Do you really want
I
them to
know.
remake Firefly right now?
No. No.
Oh,
He
maybe we
wants them to
come
keep
full
making the
circle and it
books
would
and
be
comic
okay.
books, is what he's saying.
Depends on the network. If True TV made it, it'd be all right.
Disney owns it, so
Do they?
Do they?
Never
yeah,
mind.
Disney
Yeah.
owns it? Oh,
Disney
I did
owns it.
not know that. Yeah, no, I want them to keep
Fox
their.
owns the rights to the distribution of Firefly and Serenity. Disney bought Fox. Disney owns it.
No, I don't want them
Wah,
to touch
wah,
that.
wah.
I know. Well, then, let's talk about why do we love this movie? Because this movie is probably an acquired taste for some people, but I think they did try to put a lot of work into bringing in fans that didn't know, or viewers, I should say, that didn't know anything about Firefly. And so, for me at least, the beginning of this movie is really interesting. But does somebody else want to jump in just to start with why should you watch this movie?
Well,
Because it's one of the best science fiction movies ever made.
Well, there you go.
the thing is Firefly for geeks was like a cultural phenomenon, and I was shocked the other day when I saw that Critical Drinker had never watched it, and I'm just like how have you never watched Firefly? I mean, the dialogue in Firefly and Serenity, like Joss Whedon has his failings as a director, but
And a
dialogue
person.
is not one of them. You know, I mean, like his dialogue is probably he's probably the third best dialogue writer in Hollywood. Um, and
He's number one, David Mamet.
Yeah.
no, David Mamet's. I would say
I was
David
gonna see
Man,
Mamet's.
man, it just like throws words at you. Like that, I always
Yeah,
imagine actors having to practice what that guy writes over and over
the
again.
guy who wrote West Wing is number one.
Aaron
Yeah,
Sorkin.
Aaron
Aaron
I
Sorkin.
was
Sorkin.
just going to say Aaron Sorkin is my favorite screenwriter of all time.
And David Mamet and Joss Whedon are probably somewhat interchangeable on two and three. So the dialogue is amazing. The characters are amazing. They're all really like they just leap off the screen, so to speak. And the funny thing is like this show was what and the movie were important and good because half the book's blurbs say if you liked Firefly,
Right.
you
Hmm.
know, and not only that, there is just an unending attempt for authors to recreate Firefly in their books.
And yet,
So they
cowboy science fiction is rarely successful.
I know.
because it's a visual aesthetic,
Yeah.
it's not an emotional one. So people like cowboy science fiction for the same reason they like um
Steampunk.
steampunk. They like
Yeah.
looking at it. They don't like reading about it.
Expand on that. Like a visual. Say what you just said again. So an emotional
It's
trope versus a.
cowboy science fiction is like steampunk. It's a visual aesthetic. It's something you look at that you like
Mhm.
looking at. It's not an emotional aesthetic. It's like if there's nothing emotionally attaching you to cowboy science fiction the way it might be with military sci-fi or with epic fantasy or with, any other more like Star Wars space opera. People love steampunk because of the way it looks. people love Firefly not only because of how well it's written, but because of the way it looked. The special effects in Firefly are and Serenity are amazing, even by today's standards, which are actually pretty low. I don't know how we've gone so far backward with a VFX that we have that Serenity, a 21-year-old movie, 22-year-old movie, looks better than most of the sci-fi
That
coming out
only
today.
cost $40 million, I believe, right?
Yeah,
Might have been less. Was it 30? It was
yeah.
38, I think,
Might have
Ron.
been less, yeah.
Yeah.
But so that's why people when they try to write westerns in space, they don't hit is because nobody's looking to read that. They want to see it. Same thing with steampunk. Same thing with cyberpunk. Cyberpunk's the same way.
39
It's
million, so I was close.
people love looking at it. They don't really care to read about it because
It's
there's
pretty
nothing. It
depressing, actually, when it comes down to it. But
doesn't have to be, but
yeah,
again, it's
That's
the
something, I
aesthetic.
mean, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but
It's
I've
not, we
noticed,
don't, that's not what we do here.
yes,
No tangents allowed.
I've noticed that if you look at movies like Aliens, which was made for about $40 million back in 1986, I think, and if you adjust for inflation, it's still less than $100 million in modern money to make that movie. And the special effects look so much better because everything now spends butt ton more money on CG, computer effects, and doesn't do anything practical and looks a lot worse. And I don't know why.
I can
I
tell
don't
you
know
why.
why they do that instead of using practical effects and paying less money.
Well, the practical effects, like Iron Man, like the original Iron Man, John Favreau went into that with the idea that he was going to do all of it practical, and then they got on set and the suit didn't work right. But because they had all the lighting for the suit, they were able to give that to the artists. And so there actually isn't any practical shots of the suit in Iron Man. It's all CGI, and it looks better than anything done today. And I was just reading an article about what's happened in Hollywood and why the special effects in these huge blockbusters look like trash and have been for like 5 years now or longer,
More than
really.
that.
Um, One of the things is time. So it used to be you would have 6 months to do the special effects on the computers to get it all done, have an artist look at it. So what they've done is they spent more money for less time. So there's a certain amount of time it takes to render a shot, as you guys all know. All right, Josh, you've been doing videos, you know this well.
It's a ridiculous long time.
So you can speed that up by adding more computers. But what you can't speed up is the artist actually crafting the
right.
image. And so what they've done is they've taken a bunch of artists who are really young and have not worked in the industry
Because the industry
because all the older
grinds
artists have
people up.
all been chased out.
Right.
And they said, okay, now do these special effects. You've got 3 weeks. Here's $50 million. Use all the computer power you need. And so what you're seeing is basically a rough draft of what could have been, you
Yeah.
know,
I mean, the first time I really noticed it getting bad was Black Panther, which
Hmm.
is a really, really well-made movie with great acting and great actors, and the actual filmmaking was great, and the special effects sucked.
That
They were
last part of it where
horrible.
they're fighting. Like I think
big
they're
CGI battle.
falling and fighting and they get
Yeah.
stretched. It's like, what is that's
Yeah,
like,
it's horrible. And I'm like,
yeah.
they paid a lot of money to make this film. Why don't they just take an extra 2 or 3 months and fix those special effects? Because they,
Well, I noticed it first with Dawn of Justice. Just the CG on Dawn of Justice was so bad. I was like, am I watching a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the early
well, the
2000s? I
funny thing
mean,
is, if you watch the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League, um, and watch the theatrical one, the choices they made in coloring and lighting in the Snyder cut make those special effects look better.
it, I felt like they were still pretty subpar.
And they
Um,
were much better than they were in the theatrical cut.
the Dawn of
Because everything
Justice
in the
one felt
theatrical
like,
cut was like bright red and yellow, and it looked so cartoony.
well, again, Joss Whedon came in on a movie that had already been done essentially, and he had to reshoot it because Zack Snyder's original cut was, I don't want to say unwatchable, but it wasn't anybody, nobody was going to like. I wouldn't have liked it, and I love Superman, and I would not have liked it because his take on Superman is just painful.
Well, that's not the reason that Joss Whedon came in.
Well, I I know.
So in
Like,
At
Firefly,
the
I
risk
think
of
yeah, so
I was
one
gonna
of
Firefly.
the
say,
things
at the
that I
risk of
wanted to,
ending the
before we move
tangent,
on, I wanted to note, which is this is really hard to do. I read it where people do it badly more than they do it well, but I think the world building through dialogue is something that Whedon was able, like he obviously wrote the lines, but the actors were able to pull off a lot of the kind of antiquated language that they use to describe things. I mean, it and that like establishes the world really quickly. Like you go as the movie kind of it takes you from Earth and then you go to this futuristic, classroom setting and you're kind of keyed to we're in the far future, right? And the teacher is talking in sort of an elevated language and this is why we are the way we are. And then River gets into, we don't like being told what to do. That sets you up, I think, to buy what's happening on the outer planets. And so when Mal, like if you'd never known this universe and Mal and Zoe, and then when they all are talking in a way that like quickly establishes this as these are different people. And that works really well. Like I think one of the things this movie does is just quickly establish like time, place, character, and it's doing it through the environment, it's doing it through the language they're using and kind
Yeah.
of the contrast between like this ultra futuristic world and then you get to the outer planets and the Firefly and all the physical sets of like crates that we recognize and pipes and all these things that I think speak to us as like the time we live in,
Just
which
a
is all
little
so much more real.
just a little touch that he did in the first scene that I thought was really cool was the little tablets the kids were using.
Yeah,
They had like this system of inputting there that no idea what they were doing, which so far in the future that makes sense. She's got one hand doing this thing where she's tap 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 with one, and then she's picking out things with another. And it's like, what is she doing with that thing? But that's just like it's a futuristic touch that doesn't have to make any sense, but it just lets this is another
yeah.
world.
We don't. Their interface doesn't make any sense to us now, but we do
Yeah,
understand a desk and kids in a classroom, and
yeah.
you know,
what
I
I was gonna say
Go ahead,
when
Josh.
we were when you were talking about why you should watch Serenity, like right at the top of the show, um, the one thing that struck me was that and I've said this before, to write a really good book, you need to be well read in terms of different genres that do different things well. And even if you are like we're talking sci-fi on this podcast specifically, but if you look at the first 5 minutes of the show when we first meet them on their ship. So it's interesting that this movie is like a prequel and a sequel at the same
Mhm.
time
Yeah,
to the series because it starts before the series and ends after the series, which I thought was interesting. But when we first meet them, if you've never watched the show and you don't know anything about the crew or the captain or the ship or the even the tone of the show, the first 5 minutes from when the ship starts descending through the atmosphere, that entire sequence, the part blows off. The captain's like, did that just come off my ship? And Wash is like, I think so. And he's like, that we could have problems. And he's like, oh, I don't know, we could blow up and die. And you very quickly get who these characters are, like how they interact with each other, because you watch the captain walk through his ship and he's meeting the crew
right.
and he interacts with the crew differently every single time.
That's
And
one
the
thing that struck me.
dialogue,
Yeah, well, he walks through the whole ship, so you see the ship. Like you go
right,
outside
right.
it, and then you move inside, and you see all the pieces until he's back with the engine with Keeley. And I thought that
And
Haley.
Kaylee,
Haley,
and
that's right.
not only do you learn a lot about the characters and the captain in that time, but you do it in 4 or 5 lines of dialogue. Like we know that Wash is a great pilot and he's going to put them down, and the captain trusts him to put it down because he walks off the bridge after the ship broke. You know that oh crap, I can't remember what
Well,
his
Jane's the
executive
muscle
Jane wants the
because he wants
grenades.
to bring grenades.
he
Yeah,
wants
that
the
whole
grenades,
interchange was great.
that interchange, and it comes back later when they're fighting the Reavers on the planet. And we meet the XO, and I can't remember her name, but you
Zoe.
can see that
Zoe.
Zoe.
Zoe, you can see that she's competent. You can see that they're comfortable together. Um, all of that interaction is just so immensely powerful in terms of character building and setting the tone for the story that you're setting. If you can figure out a way to do that naturally in the flow in the beginning of your book so that we know who these characters are even without knowing them.
Well, we've
Uh
talked about how important it is that the first thing they see a character doing be the most important trait of that character.
yeah.
Right? And the way Mal walks through the ship and the way he interacts with everybody, Wash is the wisecracking pilot, Zoe's the no nonsense first officer, Jane's the muscle, meathead but muscle, And then he gets to the doctor, and the way he treats the doctor, you instantly realize that this is a man, Mal is a man who has a very specific code of honor, and that is his most important trait in both the TV show and in the movie, you
Yeah.
know. And you have to do that with your book. You don't get to not do that. You can't introduce your character as a coward and expect people to like them, with some exceptions. Edge of
There's
Tomorrow being
always
one of them.
exceptions.
Right.
Um, but this is because it's not mil sci-fi. I mean, yes, there is some fighting and there's some military stuff in it. Um, but in terms of just learning craft topic, in terms of dialogue and character development, if you want great characters, you need to watch this movie, and the series too, because the series does a lot of awesome things as well. Now it's a product of its time. There's some uh, episodes that aren't great. There's some episodes that are kind of wonky, but
Joss Whedon's
um,
preoccupation with hookers is painful to watch.
100%, yeah. But if you look at if you ingest it with the mindset of trying to learn how to do these things really well, um, you cannot go wrong watching this movie, even if you don't like the genre or you're not interested in space westerns, which you're absolutely right, space westerns don't sell at all. And you would think they would because of how popular the show is and how much people say they like it, but it doesn't really sell.
I mean, I thought of this one
Um,
as more of a space zombie movie, actually, when you get into the Reavers and why the plague exists, and because that's
yeah.
one thing too that it
It's
shifts.
not though, because it's not a horror movie.
It's not, but there are aspects of it that are horror, I think. But more, it's raising stakes. Like you think this is going to be a kind of that plucky crew. They're doing a job when they hit the planet. That's talking about Miles' code, and now
Nothing
he's
here is how it seems. He is not the plucky hero.
what's that?
Said nothing here is what it seems. He is
I
not the
know.
plucky hero.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
you think it's almost going to be like they're going to
Great
rob,
line.
they're robbing things, right? And then, oh no, there are reavers on the planet. And so now the zombies arrive and start eating and, terrorizing people, and they got to get away from them. And everything about the space zombies too kind of raises the stakes. Like they're not slow, they're fast, and their ship is competent, and it will kill you and do terrible things to you. So you kind of got like the introduction of, you think you have one antagonist, in the assassin, and then you end up with another antagonist that's raising tension the whole time. Um, the only times that I felt the movie actually slowed down was when they have to do this, like it's fan service, right? But they had to bring in, I mean, I wish I'd written down the names.
Inara.
Um, and then Preacher Book, um,
Shepherd book.
Shepherd Book, yeah, right. Those are times when the story kind of like slows down and the tension drops, but that's the midpoint where they have to get to the final action. Um,
It's interesting. It's also a great example of the difference between an antagonist and an obstacle. The
mhm.
Reavers aren't really an antagonist. They're an obstacle. They're something that has to be overcome in order to face the actual antagonist,
We're
which
also sort of a MacGuffin.
Chiwetel Ejiofor's amazing performance as the
Oh
operative.
Oh
God,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Just, I saw that movie in theaters and I was like, I am watching everything this man is in from now until forever because he is so
100%.
good.
Like
Yeah.
the line, "I don't kill children," and Ejiofor says, "I
I
do
do.
if I have to."
I'm a
Yeah.
monster, Mal. I have no illusions about that.
Yeah. What I
Yeah.
do is
And
But
evil.
again, it's an example of a villain who is not mustache twirling,
Right.
who is ruthless and determined, and on one side of it, absolutely bad.
he's a true
Wh-
believer.
Mhm.
But yeah, but he's written so well that you don't hate him.
Yeah.
Even though he's the antagonist, kind of, there's other things going on. But
Well,
um,
it's two guys, him and Mal, that both have their own sense of honor, and Mal's sense of honor is based on the dignity of the individual, and the operative, his sense of honor is based on the sanctity, I don't know if that's the right word, of the stability of the state.
Mhm.
You know, the state has to be stable, the state has to be preserved because otherwise you have chaos and war and people die and everything goes into into a dark age.
We're going
It,
back to the good writing of the show, and when I say good writing, I mean the story as well. The antagonist and the protagonist mirror each other.
yeah,
Mhm.
They're both men of honor. Their honor code takes them in wildly different directions. The And so for that, in that respect, you have this great symmetry between them. And that's another thing you have to try and do. There's different kinds of villains. You can have the mustache twirling, ha ha ha, I want to rule the world villain. You can have the true believer villain. You can have the villain who's the reluctant villain. Just you have to commit to them and you have to craft that with purpose.
right,
And when every single villain's the same is when you start running into problems,
for sure.
which obviously Serenity did not have that problem.
The only so in the final sequence though, I wish that they had said something about Mal missing the nerve ganglion, right? Because
Yeah, that was
they
a missed
repeat that.
opportunity.
And yeah, that was one thing where it was like, I like to see a character, I like to know everything about the
I
character.
think some of this had to have gotten cut. There had to have been
Yeah.
some edits.
There's a scene with him and Shepherd Book where they're by a fire,
Mhm.
and Shepherd Book is talking to him about belief, and Mal is walking around holding his back in that exact spot. And I almost promised that there was an explanation or
Yeah.
something there where he said, because they set that up in the beginning, because he did this, the operative did the same thing to that scientist. So I bet you anything there was a scene that was cut that explained it, and either because they didn't have time or it didn't turn out right or whatever.
Yeah, it's a
The
shame. That would
writing,
have been
he's too
nice.
good of a writer to make that kind of sort of simple mistake accidentally.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the only weaknesses I see in this movie are mostly because of money. And stuff like that. There's a couple times when if they'd had more money and been given more run time for the movie, they probably could have had more setup. And the other thing was me and James were talking about this before the show is like the weapons the Reavers use, they're very primitive and projectile weapons, and I have a feeling that's not just a stylistic choice. It's also because they just didn't have the money for special effects for them to use, you know, more advanced weapons.
I think their special effects budget went to that final space battle. Somebody fire!
Right.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
And
Yeah.
the chase scene with the mule and the Reavers.
Mhm.
Those
Yeah,
are
there was obviously watching the movie yesterday. I've seen it a couple times, but yesterday was the first time in probably 10 years that I watched it. And it's aged really well. There are a couple of things. For instance, there are two or three key scenes that are or key story elements that are progressed by Wash saying, "Well, let's go see this person."
Mhm.
So,
yeah.
like at one point, he's like, "Well, why don't we go see Mr. Universe?" Which is not somebody who was in the show. At least not Firefly. He was in Buffy. And then not the character, the actor. And then there's like, let's get to the beacon. It just
Yeah.
there's a couple of things where
Well,
they
the
move
beacon
this.
was already talked about earlier.
Right, no, but I mean like there are a couple of story elements that could have been expanded on further that were shortcut with just a line from Wash saying, "Well, let's go here. Well, let's go there. Let's get to
I can't
this."
think of the other two. I mean, you're right about Mr. Universe. It was kind of it feels like that they had more runtime. They could have introduced the concept of Mr. Universe, maybe had them watch a wave of his or something, just something to set it up near the beginning. But
Again, though, like you saad, it's all monetary problems. Like after they come
yeah,
off Miranda, they're like, "Well, Mr. Universe is right here. Let's go see him. He's really close." And they never really set up like how the system worked. Like the entire time I watched the show, I was like, are they going to different solar systems? Like, how does this work?
Yeah, they finally set that up in the movie.
In the movie, they're like a new system with dozens of planets and hundreds of moons. I'm like, oh, okay, that would have been useful to know 13 episodes ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
One thing maybe you guys could help
I
me with
think
that.
that they didn't really want to deal with the whole faster than light travel
Yeah, they
thing.
don't. Like, so the idea of when River gets the message about Miranda, who is actually sending that message? Because if they're trying to activate,
Not a
like
message.
if it's the operative, well, I
It's not
thought
a
she was
message.
activated by some. That's what Mr. Universe says is like there's a
No,
message buried.
the activation was to trigger a violent episode so that they would be able to get a report of that from somewhere
I
in the
got that, but
alliance.
then why Miranda though?
What
Why?
happened? They said this in the movie when they triggered that violent episode. It cut loose this memory that she had absorbed the memory when she'd read the mind of a key member of Parliament about Miranda.
Okay, that wasn't. See, I wasn't connecting that. I thought they made it sound like Miranda was the key word that set her off,
No,
not that
Miranda
she was
was
remembering.
what Miranda like when they I think Mr. Universe or Miles said it when he was talking to him that when they sent this subliminal message to get her to attack, that it cut loose this memory that the thing that had been destabilizing her this whole time.
Okay, and that makes sense if it ties back to the death of that scientist.
They had a really great I really love the opening of the movie because he does something that is really hard to pull off, like really hard to pull off. James, I've talked to you about this about time jumps. Don't do them. Sure, some people can make them work, but more often than not, all you're doing is resetting the tension and leaving people wondering, why did I even watch this thing or read this thing? But with him, he does this great thing where he's like, it opens with River's dream and then switches to the real world, you think, a River being experimented on. And then it switches to the operative watching the holographic representation of this thing happening. And then there's that scene where he tells the doctor, do you know what your sin is? It's pride. And he replays the whole key members of parliament have been in the room
Right.
with this subject. He's like, you put key members of parliament in a room with a psychic. And that's sort of the foundation for that scene that Rick is talking about. But the way he opens the movie with the scene, basically the dream within a dream within a dream is pretty brilliant.
It's a
The
dream. It's a dream within a flashback.
the thing, one of the things I think to understand about from a writing perspective of this thing is we're talking about how well the opening of this movie does these things. Um, there's a couple of points here. One, the writers and writer knew the characters extremely well when they were writing this movie.
Mhm.
And so for them, they they were not starting from zero because they had the material already written, but also they had the actors who, put their own spin on things. Um, so when you're going through something like this is why my openings for my books usually take 3 or 4 or 5 times to get right, and usually I don't get them right until after the book is finished, because you learn a lot about the characters and the setting and the story as you're writing the book that you don't know when you start. And so when we're talking a lot about this opening and we're praising it, we're saying, do this, do this, do this. Yes, do that, but don't get so focused on trying to get the beginning right before writing the rest of your book, because a lot of things are going to change inevitably. They are going to change, and you will know your characters a lot better. And so you'll be able to come up with some kind of, whether it's witty dialogue or smart dialogue or important dialogue that speaks to the characters better after you've done the drafting work and the building work and that. And so I would encourage anybody to obviously try to write an opening like this, but also go back after you finish your book and reread the opening and see where you can make the characters pop more than just, having a bland start. You know what I mean?
Makes you look
Plus,
smart too.
if you rewrite the opening after you've written the ending, you can tie them together in
Right.
a
For
much
sure.
more organic way. One of the things I love about Athon was writing the three books first before the first one was published because it let me go back and take ideas I had come up with in the third book and then sprinkle them throughout the first two books. So it looked like I was smarter than I actually am.
Hmm.
100%. Well, and it's actually something that I realized. I think I had the thought last night, but it really made sense when I watched the beginning of this. Is that I have a character in Weaponized called Quinn, and she's a hacker, and she's for most of the book she's imprisoned on this slave ship, and we see her use these her skills and all of that. But one of the things that I did was I set up some conflict with one of the ruling class, if you will, in the book with her, where he's coming on to her and he's kind of being that creepy, kind of really extremely flirty guy at the bar that's trying to take home the bartender kind of thing. And she has a couple of conversations with him that end poorly. And what I thought about that I hadn't considered prior was at the ending of the book, then while they're fighting to get off the ship, it would be really nice to wrap that with her like punching him in the face or like throwing him down an open elevator air shaft or something like that. Something that does something for
Something
her as a
fun.
character. It gives her something to do, but it also closes that loop,
Right.
and it gives us a little bit of uh cyclic or I can't think of the word right
Cycling
now.
back to something that was established in the
Yeah,
beginning,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The reason why it's so important to do what Josh is just saying is otherwise, what was the point of the beginning? What was the
Right.
point of taking the time to show him
Setup
hitting on
and
her or
setup and
whatever?
payoff. It's something that's lost in modern movies to a
Yeah.
great extent.
If you don't have the payoff, then there's what's the point of the setup?
Yeah.
And because setup only exists to give you an emotional satisfaction when the payoff happens.
Just use a modern example. I didn't watch this movie yet, but I've listened to reviews that point this out that in the new Minecraft movie, there's a
Yeah, I was just gonna
setup
say.
where the kid who's in this movie is like this super genius inventor who builds a jetpack out of garbage, in a junkyard. And the reviewer is saying, so you think this would be a setup for a payoff later, like when he's in the Minecraft universe, that he
Mhm.
would invent something that nobody thought of before, but he doesn't.
Well, he even did it again with the because he makes a gun out of like a chicken nugget and a battery or something. So you're right. They've like set it up. I did see the movie with my with
Yeah.
my daughter. I actually had no interest in seeing the Minecraft movie, but I saw it this weekend with a bunch of 7-year-olds. Um, but you're right.
I'm
They've set
sorry.
that up multiple times.
I would have loved to have seen it if it was good. I like good movies,
I guess
and
with kid movies, my bar is pretty low. Like it was,
And
it
also
was
they also
better
say
than
that
other movies.
the reviewer was saying they set up that, Jason Momoa was a huge video game
Right.
star back in the 80s. So you might think that's setting up for his abilities as his talents as a video game player to be useful in Minecraft, but it's not.
Mhm.
It's
and so
kind
you
of
have to
a
have that. If you don't have the payoff in your book, you're going to have a very unsatisfying ending. And whether you want to believe this or not, because some people don't, but whether you want to believe it or not, the only thing people will remember about your book is the ending. And if they like the ending, they'll have good thoughts about your book. If they dislike the ending, they'll have bad thoughts about your book. And the longer it's been since they've read it, the more that emotional ending will get them, whether it's a good emotional ending or a bad emotional ending. And so Mickey Spillane used to say your first page sells this book and your last page sells the next book. If they don't like the end of your book, they're not going to go on to buy the next one, as these guys talked about last week.
And
So
and getting back to Serenity, the ending of Serenity, I thought is why I was kind of exaggerating, saying, "Oh, it's the best science fiction ever made," but it's why it still holds a place in my heart after all these years, is because it took everything that happened in the show, and as much as it could in the time that it had, it wrapped up all these threads and gave you a satisfying ending. Uh, in some cases, wrapping up personal arcs, and others taking them to the next level and giving you some kind of like hope that they'll, like something will happen. And it the ending of the movie just, you know, impressed me. It impressed me that he was able to take this not even completed season of a show that was aired out of order and bring all those threads from all those people together and try to make something satisfying and emotionally rewarding out of it. I thought it was a very impressive job of doing that.
I mean, even
One thing
given
I would have done wildly different,
what's
and this
that?
is a spoiler alert, was not killed the second best character in the movie.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was just going to say is like Wash dying gives River the opportunity to close her arc by becoming the pilot, and now the world is opening, the universe is opening up for River. But you're right, like Wash, I don't everything I see Alan Tudyk in, I pretty much like. So I was pretty bummed when he went.
He was the second best character in the TV show. I
Mhm.
think that Wash was kind of underserved in the movie.
Yeah, I
He
agree.
was he was not given the same kind of importance that he was in the TV show. And I mean, I liked Wash's character. It didn't him dying did not bother me as much though because I felt uh it gave more of
Wait,
a character arc to Zoe. She it felt like the rest of the movie she'd been kind of like a moral compass for Mal,
Hmm.
but I hadn't seen like stakes may be the wrong word, but some kind of emotional investment for her. And then when he died, it's like you're trying to figure out if she's going to be able to keep herself together and keep going on without him. And I thought the actress did a great job of showing that.
but she's a fan. All of these people are fantastic actors, and you know this because they all went on to have and continue to have really good careers. Jewel State was on Atlantis. She was just recently on a hit show about a lawyer. Alan Tudyk has been in every Disney movie that's been made since Firefly came out,
Hmm.
in one form or
If you haven't
another.
seen Resident Alien, like
His
definitely check
Resident
that
Alien
out.
show is
He's
really
hilarious in that
popular.
show.
He was
Um,
really good as the robot in Rogue One.
Right.
and he was really good as the robot in iRobot.
Hmm.
Oh,
And
yeah, true.
yeah, and what's his face?
Good old
Malcolm
what's
Reynolds.
Oh yeah, he's been in
He's
Everything.
done something that,
Castle and The Rookie.
yeah, very few actors do, which is he's had multiple hit TV shows. Very few actors uh have that kind of career. So I mean they're all really good. And my favorite thing about watching any show that any of them are in is waiting for when the other actors are going to come in. Adam Baldwin came in on Castle, and Mal's been in Resident Alien, and then the next season of Resident Alien, Jewel State, who plays Kaylee, is going to be in it. So it's a lot of fun seeing them all come back together.
And of course, River, what's her character's and what's the actress's
Summer
name?
Glau.
Summer Glau has been in multiple Joss Whedon
Mhm.
projects, and she was in one of the best science fiction TV series ever made, Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles.
So
Are
it's
you
just like
being
they're all good
facetious or are you
actors.
No,
being
I'm
Oh, it's
not. I
good.
serious?
think it's
It's
the
good.
best
Yeah.
TV science fiction TV series ever made.
I never watched it because it looks stupid,
It was
but
incredible.
my people I know have watched it, and they all say the same thing Rick said, that it was just
It has
badass.
it has incredible acting and great writing and music choices, and the action scenes are for a TV show, they're just insane. And the only tragedy is that it ended kind of on a cliffhanger, but it was an awesome cliffhanger. It was like one of those things where holy crap. If I don't know if you ever watched the TV show Millennium.
Mhm.
No.
I know what it is,
I
but
think I started it, but I
Well,
don't think I
season
ever
two of
finished
Millennium
it.
ends with this plague getting loose,
mhm.
and the main character and his daughter are like they're in a house. The mother is dead. She sacrificed herself to give them the cure, the vaccine for it, and they're like sitting there in this cabin in the woods, listening to static on the ham radios, like there's nothing out there, and that's the end of season two. And if they hadn't screwed it completely up in season three, that would have been an incredible ending. But that's the type of thing like Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles. It ends and you're like, holy crap, I want to see what happens next, and then nothing did. But
But yeah, so they all, I mean, Adam Baldwin was on the last ship, among other things,
yeah.
and they've all gone. Adam and
Also in Independence Day.
why can't I think of the character's name? Or the actor's name, Adam Malcolm Reynolds,
Oh,
It's
Nathan Fillion.
Nathan Fillion.
Nathan
Nathan
Fillion.
Fillion, and Alan Tudyk were all in the Halo games, as a
Oh, I didn't
squad
know
in
that.
Halo
Nathan Fillion's going to be
ODST.
playing Guy Gardner in the new Superman movie.
Yeah, so it's not only was the TV show and the movie really well written and really well directed, it starred a bunch of incredibly talented and even the Doctor, whom I did not like ever, and not in the TV show and not in the movie, he went on to be in a couple of TV shows that were really successful. So the whole, it was one of those things where you had your critical drinker reviewed it and he's like, I wish I had seen this when it came out because I did not know how good we had it, and
Well, when it
how
came
much.
out, it was not the time to watch it. The time to watch it was when it came out on DVD, and you could watch the episodes in order and
Yeah,
the
that's
ones
a whole
before it
other
aired.
thing. Yeah, I
Right.
watched both. But he's like, we didn't know how good we had it, and you're right, we didn't know how good we had it because that show was amazing and the movie is amazing, and you rarely get things that are written and directed and starred in that well anymore.
And
And
the movie
obviously
manages to do, I mean, other shows have had movies to try to wrap up their various unfulfilled plot arcs. Like Stargate had a couple of movies, three movies, okay. Um,
they're all really
and
good,
they're good. But I felt only one of them really did a great job of wrapping up story arcs.
but they're
Uh,
made for TV movies though. This was a
yeah,
Yeah.
theatrical movie. There's
yeah,
a
that's
big
true.
difference.
Um,
Not that anybody under the age of 30 knows what a made for TV movie is anymore,
yes,
but
that's true
Well,
too.
there's made for
Right.
Netflix now. Like there's straight to streaming, and you know,
Well,
Yeah.
what's funny is everybody, and this is another tangent too, but it's funny that the no one obviously knows what made to straight to TV movies are, and those used to be like it's just made for TV, okay, and everybody had this automatic like it's gonna suck, and then that same type of mentality kind of carried over to streaming for a while, but now, um there are so many good movies on streaming now that, and some of them are, I mean, some of them are, bleh, but um, there are like Extraction is a really good example of a good movie that
the
went
first
straight to
one anyways.
streaming. The first one, right?
I mean, movies are
Um,
fighting for their lives right now because, we've had so much great TV, episodic TV, Sopranos, Game of Thrones, things that are pulling in the money. And
mhm.
now, like, that's one of the reasons I take my daughter to movies as much as I can because I feel like we're probably living in the end of theatrical movies, and it makes me sad. But
It doesn't have, the crazy thing is it doesn't have to be that way. Just
yeah,
write good movies. I mean,
Your
I
this is
mean,
not
if you
rocket
write,
science.
your mic
the
just shifted.
audiences are
Oh,
showing that
no,
if you
wait, now
make a
it's
movie
fine.
that's even halfway entertaining, they will go see it.
hmm
But the problem is nobody wants to put the effort in, and also there's to production, the companies meddle so much in the movies nowadays.
yeah,
It's just it's like they're trying to sabotage themselves. It's almost like you would think they're, I mean, in it for the tax relief or something because they don't seem to want to make money.
hmm
Well, it's there's a lot of politics involved in who's making the movies and who's writing the movies.
Oh,
You'd
the
think that,
writing in
like,
movies has gotten so much worse in the
yeah.
last 10 years.
Well, it's like my son's a huge Halo fan, right? He loves Halo. And they announced the Halo TV show and he was really excited about it. And
right.
then we're watching the director and the lead writer talk about the show, saying we didn't want to be constrained by the video games, so we instructed the writers not to play the video games. And the show is crap. The show is utter crap.
It's
And
such a like that type of mentality is crazy because the reason you're making a movie is because the game was so good that
yeah,
it made so much money that we're like, okay, we're gonna making a movie now and getting the money to do it. Like that's why there's so many remakes and live action remakes, whatever, because of- from compared to an IP that has no following versus an IP that has a following, you're going to make money on the IP that has a following. And then when you look at the properties that are like, oh yeah, this made a boatload of money, we're going to make a movie on this, but we're not going to do the story at all. We're just going to use the set dressing and call it Halo. Like that stuff is so ridiculous to me from a standpoint of business because you're removing the entire reason that the people loved the game
You can have a
or the
license to print money. Like everything that comes before
100%.
it is an advertisement for the thing that you're making if it's good. And
Right.
like I spent like I mean I don't often do this, but I spent an hour watching a YouTube series that some people made for The Witcher that was hilarious and the production value was really good and you could tell that they played the games because the interior that it was just so good. I was like I want this to be a TV show. Like or I will watch this. I will pay for this. But I,
Somebody made back about 15 years ago, they made this is a big thing. They were making like a DC character fan series. Like there was one called Grayson about Dick Grayson, Robin. Uh, and Batman's been murdered and he's investigating it. And I mean, it was really well done for, I mean, what had to have been a shoestring budget, and
There was
not
a fan Star Trek
professional
show that was like
actors.
yeah,
that too.
I mean,
Yeah.
Star Trek Lower Decks, like those writers, they have watched Star Trek. They love the Next Generation. Like they've done so many
I
things in
hard
the show that
disagree.
I think, I mean, they know Trek like so much more than the current Trek. Like I
I
think it's the
so
best of
hard disagree.
really we'll have to discuss that.
That
But
is the Rick and Morty of Star Trek, and it is such a
but can you argue
Well,
insult
they
to
know
Star
what
Trek.
Star Trek is though? I
I was
mean,
gonna say to James's point, a lot of the comedy that they use in the show wouldn't be possible if the writers didn't know Star Trek.
Well, I
Like
mean,
the story themselves might not be Star Trek, but a lot of the humor that happens in the show is because they know Star Trek so well. It wouldn't work otherwise.
yeah, I don't think it works.
we're
I
going to talk about
I
Star Trek in
yeah,
another
yeah.
episode,
I
Let's
think it
let's get
works
back
as
to
well as them
Serenity.
having
We
Spock
should
say
call
the
this
F
a
word.
Serenity tangent.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Serenity Tangent Show. I just one thing to tie this back to MilSF. Do we think that? I mean, how did this show play on the fact that Mal and Zoe are vets and
It was a
they're
huge part of it.
right?
Yeah.
So how do you think that that was done well or
I
like
love when he says to what's your Anara, if you see me fighting a war, you'll see a different version of me,
Mhm.
you'll know the difference. And then you go to Haven and they've killed all the people on Haven and killed Shepherd Book, and then he starts fighting a war, and everybody sees the difference immediately. Like it's a totally different person.
If I hear another word that's not helping me or taking your leave, you
I'll
know,
shoot you down.
Right. Yeah.
it
And
was interesting. He was a very deep, complex character, and from the very moment you see him in the TV show, like the end of the first episode, like the actual end of the first episode, where he shoots that guy in the leg. He's like, I do the job and I get paid. Or when he's walking back up onto the ship and the agent has River and he's like, the agent's all like holding her with a gun to her head. He's like, okay, I want this and I want that. And Mal just shoots the guy in the forehead and him and Jane throw the dude off the ship. You have this very complex character in Mal, in all of them, even Jane, for all of his seemingly two-dimensional aspects, was a deep character
Mhm.
who had a lot of complexity to him. And he's my favorite character of the show.
he
I
he
like
has the
Jane
best
because
lines in the movie too. It's
Yeah.
like, don't say it. It only works on her. Well, now I know that.
well, now I know.
I still quote one of his best lines from the TV show all the time. If wishes were horses, we'd all be eating steak.
Right. The thing out there, and this goes to character as well, and I can't remember the comparison they made. There was a YouTube video that made a comparison, a tough guy comparison. They were comparing James and another character, and I can't remember what the other
Did
character
Amos?
was.
Oh, Amos and Jane.
It was
Probably.
Amos.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
And
we talked about this once before.
I think we did too. But the thing is that Jane is competent, but he doesn't come off as a badass. But he is a
But he
badass,
is a badass.
and that
Yeah.
is that speaks a lot to his character that he is a badass and he can do these things. but he's also just a normal dude who doesn't think too much of himself. Like he's not up on himself, he's not full of himself, but if he needs to, he can punch a dude right in the face and not feel bad about it. And
And he'll
That
kill a
was
man in a fair fight, or if
well,
he
that's
thinks
what
he's
we
yeah,
going to
know
start a
Start a
fair
fair
Jeffery.
fight,
fight.
It
or if
felt
he
like to
or if
me,
he's bugging him, or if there's a
yeah,
woman involved,
they were
or
really
right.
money,
playing up the
mostly for money.
tension between Mal and the Doctor, where it felt like the show was building tension between Mal and Jane, and because it was like there was times like they were like in a lot of conflict in the show, which they kind of moved away from. But when was it in the show when you see Jane get in his bunk and he kisses his rifle before he goes to bed?
Vera.
Was that like the first episode? I know that.
No,
Okay,
that was the one where they were where they got the physics wrong too, where they thought they had to put the rifle in a spacesuit to shoot it in a vacuum.
oh yeah,
The episode that changed the dynamic between Mal and Jane was the one where they went to one of the core planets and Jane betrayed them,
right.
and then Mal finds out at the end and he puts them in the airlock and as the ship's taken off, and the only thing that saved Jane was him saying, "Don't tell them it was me." And I just, man, that episode killed me. I love that. So,
Mm.
but yeah, the military aspect of it, obviously, I mean, they never say specifically that Jane was in the military, but it's kind of obviously he was. I don't think Wash was, but he might have been. He was
No,
awfully
Wash
good
wasn't.
pilot for
Remember War
civilian.
Stories? They said he
Say
was
again?
not in the military in War Stories.
Oh,
In the
Jane wasn't.
no, Wash.
Wash.
Watch wasn't.
In War Stories when they get taken captive by the by that guy who sent him on the train job mission, and you know the whole thing is Wash is saying, telling Zoe, I feel inadequate because you guys have this relationship, you and Mal, because you were in the military and I wasn't.
Well, they were in the military together.
But he
That
wasn't
was
in
the
the
whole
military
thing.
though.
Yeah.
They said, I think they say that outright, but
Mhm.
I
But
don't know
the
if Jane was. Jane, if Jane was, he was probably on the Alliance side.
but
You know,
the way
James
they
was an E4, an E4. You know, he was an E4 when he was
The for
in.
Mafia.
Yeah,
but the way that they write the veterans was probably more respectful of veterans than most TV shows write.
Mhm.
And obviously, there's a comparison between the Browncoats and the Confederacy. But the I feel
Movie
like
reminds me a lot of the Outlaw Josie Wales in some ways.
I feel a lot. I feel like it's enough there that you could call it military sci-fi adjacent for sure.
Mhm.
I agree. I agree. And again, the re being well read or well versed in different genres is important, I think, if you're going to be a well-rounded writer who's not trying to do just one thing with your book. And I mean, yes, we focus on mil sci-fi, but there are so many other genres that do so many good things. I mean, we've talked about Peter Hamilton before and how well he does space opera. Like, um, Firefly is a really good example of kind of like a campy space opera, but it also does a lot of things well that a lot of good TV shows. Like, for instance, I think that Firefly and Serenity does a much better at character development than Battlestar Galactica the remake did, the 2004. Even though those characters were good and I love that show, they established those characters in 5 minutes, where in Battlestar sometimes it takes a long time. Of course, it's a long running series and it's a different, but um I lost my train of thought there. But the
One thing I'll note about them
You
being
lost your train
vets
job of thought.
is it's a
well
shortcut
done.
for competency, and not to make that sound, we're all awesome. I mean, some of the dumbest people I've ever met were in the army, um, but it's a shortcut for competency. Like the way they solve problems, like the way Zoe and Mal like immediately just are synced, move to solving a problem. They're action oriented. You know, I think that's an extension of them having been in the military and have been vets, and it's a
Agreed.
way that you can establish character and why they can even do these things right off the bat, and so it works in that way too.
One thing I'd like to address, we were talking a little bit about it before, the relationship between Mal and the operative. Um, it 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 struck me in that movie that the operative was not used to people who he couldn't just handle immediately.
Mm.
And like when he met Mal, and by the way, I really appreciate a movie with two antagonists and protagonists like that, where they have multiple head-to-head meetings, because it doesn't happen as much as it should in movies nowadays. But um, when he meets him in the Anara's, what do they call it? The something house,
Training
training
house
house. Uh,
for hookers.
you can tell that he expects this to go one way. He expects this to be over in a few minutes. And when Mal escapes, he's like annoyed. And as the movie goes along, you can see that the operative begins to respect Mal and also feel like he knows him a lot better.
Mm.
I mean, that's a one-way street because Mal isn't really trying to know the operative. Um,
Right.
but the operative's trying to get to know Mal, and you can tell by then that. And then in the confrontation in the underneath
Mr.
Mr.
Universe.
Universe's broadcast thing there, down in the pit, the bowels of the thing, wherever the backup.
Empire Strikes Back moment.
Yeah. I love that line when he shoots Mal with the stunner, and Mal gets up and says, "You shot me in the back. I haven't made you angry, have I?" I love that line. It's just like calling back to, you can't make me angry. And then Inara says, "Oh, please spend an hour with him." but
Right.
but then when he turns around and says, "I haven't made you angry, have I?" That
So,
was a great line.
so I think we all agree it's a great movie and it's definitely one that should be watched. And if you haven't seen it, watch Firefly, then watch
We'll
Serenity.
appreciate it a lot more.
Yeah,
Right
you'll
now,
appreciate it more, but it is not it's not impossible to enjoy the film without having watched Firefly, but it helps.
Yeah.
and right now you can buy the entire first season of Firefly on Amazon for $5.99. Just FYI.
I get it on Blu-ray because you never know when Amazon will steal it from you. So
Valid concern.
it goes on sale quite often. All right. Well, hey, thanks for hanging out with us. If you have thoughts and feelings about Firefly, which you should, let us know either in the comments or the Discord. And I don't know. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Shiny.
I'm a leaf on the wind.
I'm a leaf on the wind.
Watch as I soar.
It's too
Let's
soon.
be bad guys.